Yes, yes, yes. We're back in the dark once again. And welcome to another episode of A Scott in the Dark. And this one is on communication, and it's on communication throughout the whole process of creation and installation. This is also the very first episode that I am actually doing a video for. I'm actually taping myself right now and taping. Gosh, that shows how old I am, doesn't it? I am recording digitally images that move and make sound. It's just like these amazing newfangled gadgets they got these days. Anywho, I'm doing a video as well for my YouTube channel, so you can go and watch and see how grungy I look today. The nice thing is I'm only allowing the imagery to view me from the waist up, so I may or may not be wearing pajama pants. You'll never know. Okay, but today in today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about how to communicate between creatives, directors and producers. You know, the people who have the money, and how to pitch new ideas. And also, I have a great recorded interview that I did when I was at HauntCon with designer Chris Kleckner, and that will be part of today's episode. And I also want to talk about a great new book that will help you specifically with brainstorming, and it is called The Event Brainstormer, and it was written by a guy by the name of Bob Glickman, and it's a very cool book. We'll talk about that though at the end of the show, and you can get it anywhere, so it's pretty neat. So let's start by talking about communication in general. When you are communicating within this industry, you have to communicate with a whole bunch of different kinds of people in kind of different ways from time to time. Sometimes in my position, for example, I have to communicate to somebody I don't know, somebody who has a brand new project that they want me to work on. And so they give me just bits and pieces, and then I have to try to figure out, well, okay, how do I share what I can do with these people? After the project, hopefully after the project is approved and I'm working on it, then I have to communicate with their designers or select designers to work with and find out who can I communicate with the best. Then I have to communicate with the other folks who are sort of on my level of the corporate hierarchy. I have to find ways to communicate with the marketing people and the merchandise people and the culinary people, if those are part of the project, obviously. And then I have to be able to communicate to the cast. I have to be able to find out, how do I translate the artistic vision that has either been developed by myself or is being interpreted by me, and how do I communicate that to the frontline performers? And I've discovered over the years that it's kind of tough. It's challenging because you can't talk to everybody with the same language or give them the same information. What I've found, the easiest way for me is to figure out, first off, what goals are you trying to accomplish? In fact, when I do new proposals for anything, that is the first segment on the written document, and that is, what are the goals of this? And maybe those goals are to terrify the most number of guests, or to entertain the most number of guests, or to earn the most money, or to make the facility the star so it can be a marketing tool for other things. All of these are valid goals, but I think you have to identify what goal you're addressing depending on who you're talking to. I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but for example, the marketing person's goal is to try to get as many people through the door as possible. The artistic director or creative director's goal is usually to create the most incredible event they possibly can, the most artistically interesting and challenging. The producer's goal, the person who signs the checks, their goal may be to make the most money they possibly can. And the frontline actor's goal may be to have the most fun and scare the most people. So by identifying, or at least talking about those goals and identifying those goals, you're able to figure out what words, what phrases, what things you can bring to the forefront. Now, once you've done that, I think most of my job as a communicator within the planning and the installation of an event, most of my job is to act as translator. I try to act as translator from the producer or the client to the actors, to let them know that the operational side is very important to them. However, if it weren't for that operational side, they wouldn't have the opportunity to scare people and do what they want to do. So it's all about making connections of goals. It's a lot simpler than it sounds, I guess. You want to make certain that everybody understands what is important to these people and what is important to these people and what is important to you may be all different things. But I think it's really, really important to recognize what is important to each individual and be able to synergize and make connections between all of the powers that be, or all of the elements within any production. Otherwise, you run the risk of being very, what I call, siloed. So it's a bunch of ivory towers operating next to each other. Another way to look at it is, think of it like a shopping mall. Every store has its own goal, but when they work together, they create an overall shopping mall. The same is true with all of the different elements of a haunted attraction, or any performance element, really. It is a collaborative effort. So you have to make certain that the sum of the parts is greater than all of the individual parts. And that's exactly what happens in a good theatrical production. So hopefully people can understand that and make use of the idea of understand what is important to other people. And that will help you choose the language and the information that you want to share with them. That's a very long sort of diatribe on the basics of communication within the industry, but I think it is the best way to start when you're trying to communicate with a bunch of different people. So if you are out there, how can you apply all of this information? If you are out there and you happen to be let's say a director of a theatrical piece or a haunted attraction or whatever, and the most important thing to you is it's your first year, and the most important thing to you is to set good groundwork so that you can continue to do this and continue to be profitable for years to come. The more you're able to find ways to communicate that to the rest of your team, the more likely it is that they'll be able to help you with it. If you are an actor and it's the first time you've ever worked in a haunted attraction, you need to really listen to hear what their responsibilities and what their goals are, what they want to accomplish, and do what you can to help them accomplish them. And if you're a director, you have to listen to your actors. If you hear your actors saying, I just want to get out there and scare people, then don't bore them with the business side. But make them understand that the more successful they are at scaring people, the more successful the event will be and the happier you and the producer will be. It's basically figuring out how to explain to people how multiple goals can work simultaneously to support each other and create win-win scenarios. And that's really the basics of communication up front. Now what I'd like to do is I'm going to shift to a pre-recorded interview that I did at HauntCon. And this is with a scenic designer and educator, a guy by the name of Chris Kleckner. So here's just a little bit, well, actually it's the whole interview. It's not a little bit. It's the whole interview that I did with Chris. And this was actually recorded on the HauntCon trade show floor. And you, video, are going to stop now, because otherwise you just have to watch me go about fiddling with the computer and doing some editing. So that's it for the video. Thanks for watching, and thanks for listening. Hopefully, until I see you again next time, you can rest in peace.